Hello everybody and welcome to the Age Group Triathlon Podcast. My name is Simon Olney, I'm a professional triathlon coach, and in this week's episode I'm going to be looking at how to bounce back from a disappointing race. Now, whenever you start out in the sport, your first finish and your first handful of finishes, they are going to feel great because you cross that line. And in those early days, improvement, broadly speaking, is exponential. Broadly speaking, you're going to be faster at every race. Now, it may be that your time itself is a little bit slower than the previous race, but if it was a hillier race, there were different factors, but broadly speaking, you're going to see a nice upwards exponential improvement with your racing. But after a while, after you get a few races under your belt, especially after you've been in the sport for a couple of years, not every result is going to feel amazing. Not every event is going to be a personal best. And actually, in some cases, you're going to come away outright disappointed with your result. And this can be pretty tough, especially if you have been in sport for a year or two and you're used to seeing personal best after personal best and success after success. And then you find yourself having completed this big race that you may have actually spent months working towards. You come away with it feeling disappointed. And that you didn't set that personal best, you didn't have a great time, something went wrong, you just weren't able to pull it out the bag on the day. And you're sat there not feeling quite like you wasted your time, but you didn't achieve what it is that you wanted to. And you're used to achieving what it is that you set out to achieve. How do we handle this? How do we manage this? How do we move forwards with our training? Now, this is something that I've wanted to cover for some time. But it was difficult for me to find a way to explain it. It didn't feel that I might be pointing fingers or, putting people down. So I wanted to use an example of my own disappointing race, which I had last Sunday. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to talk you through what happened on the day, the various things that went wrong, and how it is that I can sort of rationalise this in my mind, and how it is that I can move forward with my own training and my own racing. But first, let me set the scene to give you a little bit of context. So, first race back in a while, obviously, it being May. And it's safe to say I'm not in the shape of my life at the moment. But, equally not in terrible shape either. I did some practice swims in open water in the week ahead running up to the race. It has been very cold recently. When I first got in, it was about 13 degrees. And honestly, I really struggled. I struggled to keep my face in the water due to the brain freeze from the cold water. That's always my issue in cold water. I did a practice swim where I had an underlayer, sort of a neoprene rash vest, and my wetsuit and my gloves, and just sort of a normal swim cap. Then I went back in a few days later after struggling really badly in that swim with no gloves, no rash vest, just what I'd be wearing on race day. The water had increased by about like half a degree. Got in, felt a bit more comfortable. I wasn't doing heads up breaststroke for quite as long, but still it was a struggle. I was feeling anxious. Honestly, ahead of race day, thinking, look, I'm like, once I get up to speed, I'm fine. But like the first 200 meters, there is like more stopping starting than I would like. And if you're in a group, like you don't want to be having to stop and to do breaststroke. Like it's not considerate. It is not for other people, to suddenly stop swimming front crawl and start kicking breaststroke. It's not the done thing. I'd also done, a fair bit of cycling, sort of 2 or 3 times a week, but largely indoors on my road bike due to the weather. Did a couple of rides outside, but I realised as the race approached, sort of 2 or 3 weeks out, I haven't really done much time on my TT bike. It was a bit of a last minute decision to sign up. And so the ability of me to throw down big watts on the bike, I knew it just wasn't going to be there. So I made the decision not to take any fancy wheels, not to run an aero helmet or anything like that. Just because I knew loads of people would be passing me and I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of passing someone on a, really aero setup. I thought I'll just turn up, it's a low-key event. I'm just here for fun and for vibes. So I'm just going to rock. We're going to take my race bike, but I'm not going to be taking a bunch of aero accessories to make me, try and go that little bit faster. And my running, I know where I'm running is just good. I know I can always rely on it to pull it out the bag when needs be. Was I expecting to be going, under 20 minutes for a 5k? No, I think that's very unlikely at this event. I mean, if I were to go to a park run, I haven't done a park run for some while, but if I was going to do all out 5k, sub 20 minutes, it would be unlikely, but it would be possible. But this race, absolutely no chance. My first mistake, which really didn't help, is that I put everything in the car, left, and then when I was about 5 minutes from home, the race is only about a 20-minute drive away, about 5 minutes from home, I realised that I forgot my sunglasses and my contact lenses. I bought everything that I needed to do to complete the race, but I meant to put in my contact lenses and pick up my sunglasses, and I forgot. And I was there with my glasses, which again, would have been, I could have done the race, but I would have been squinting into the sun an awful lot. It would have probably given me a bit of a headache. And I thought, you know what, it's such a bright day, it's such a hot day, I've put contingency into my planning for exactly this kind of thing. So I did a UE in the car, drove back, picked up my sunglasses and my contact lenses, put them in when I got to the venue, but I was then starting to run a little bit tight time-wise. Arrived, picked up my race pack, and I was sort of putting my stickers on my helmet and putting my time chip around my ankle. Club member comes over to me and tells me the water temperature is 18 degrees, which, based on the 13 that I struggled with, huge weight off my mind, massive weight off my mind. And I stick everything back into my bag, head over to transition with my bike, rack my bike, put my shoes out, everything is there ready to go, and I then can't find my goggles in my bag. And this is a mistake, massive mistake that I made, which was I didn't bring a spare pair of goggles. And this is something that I tell people to always bring a spare pair of goggles, but I got complacent. I've done so many triathlons, I've never once had one break on me at the start, and that I just forgot to bring the second pair of goggles. And I'm there having a bit of a panic, but I've seen the goggles, I know they're there. They were there with me when I was taking things out of the car. So where have they gone? So I retraced my steps, and there on the floor where I was getting my timing chip out, I find my goggles on the floor. Massive sense of relief. Okay, right, we're fine, because I would have done breaststroke with no goggles, but it would have been slow and it would have made the rest of the day sort of a bit of a waste of time, really. So huge relief, and reminder to yourself, always bring spare pair of goggles. Reminder to podcast listeners, always pack that spare pair of goggles. By the time that I found my goggles, my transition area was racked, and I had made that obligatory last toilet stop before the start of the race. I was cutting it very tight, making it to the race briefing. I made it just in time. Again, this is just me getting complacent, having done so many triathlons over the years. But the course had changed, and I really did need to be there for that briefing. You should always be there for the briefing, no matter how many races it is that you've done. So, got to the start, and I was pretty frustrated at the start, if I'm honest, because I looked around and it was a mass start, and there weren't that many people in the wave that I was in. So I placed myself towards the front. I knew, again, I've only been swimming for a couple of months properly, but I thought to myself, look, I'm a reasonable swimmer. I'm not a terrible swimmer. And it's all pretty spread out, so let me line myself up on the line. So I was there on the line, waiting for the gun to go, and with 10 seconds to go, this geezer floats along on his back in front of me and just sits there and then sets off at his own pace, and it's like, are you kidding me? So, I immediately overtake him, and I press on, find some feet, and I'm drafting feet for the most of the way around the swim. Obviously, there are parts when that person who I was drafting, they sped up or I slowed down, wherever it was, the gap disappeared, and I didn't really have it in me to sort of, let's sprint up to try and follow those feet, because I knew that I was only there for a chill race. I was there, I was going to do my best, I was going to go hard. But I wasn't willing to completely empty myself in the swim for the sake of coming out sort of 10, 15 seconds ahead. So these gaps appeared, these gaps disappeared. I stayed on feet. I don't think my sighting was absolutely A1 at points. I did find myself veering off to the left, which I have a bit of a habit of doing, but I tried to stay on track. I don't think I added too much distance onto my swim. And then came around out of the water, and I was just over 15 minutes, which again, as someone who used to swim 13, 15, it's not great, is it? But I'd only be swimming for a while, so I thought, hey, whatever, it's the first race of the season. Give yourself some credit. Don't let it go to your head. So went into transition, had a reasonably tidy transition one. Hopped onto the bike, started pedaling. Again, it was just one of those nice moments. I was there with my bike, running with the bike, holding onto the saddle, having a nice efficient run, overtaking plenty of people. Get onto the bike, start putting the power down. Now I was there putting down, that sort of zone 3, low zone 4 power, where you'd expect to be for a sprint triathlon. In fact, for a sprint, I'd rather be in zone 4. But I knew when I was holding that sort of power that my legs were going, we're just not going to have a great run if we hold this power. So I just sort of backed off that little bit, that high zone 3. And then working along, and looking down and looking at my speed and going, wow, like I am really unfit. Like if I'm only going this fast. Like I was sub 30 kilometers per hour. Going like, yikes, like this isn't good. Like I'm glad I don't have my aero helmet on right now. But it turns out, I looked at the data afterwards, like it was an uphill the first half, like a slight uphill the first half of the ride and slight downhill the second half. So the second half, when I was averaging about 34, 35, I felt an awful lot better about myself. But it wasn't especially fast bike, but it was okay. I got overtaken quite a bit. I actually overtook a lot of people. It's pretty average. The bike is probably my weakest discipline these days, despite being my strongest when I first started. Last couple of kilometres, heading towards the finish. I'm riding along in an area that has, some shadows from trees on the road, and I hit a pothole. And as soon as I hit this pothole, I feel these weird vibrations coming through my tyre, and I think, oh, you are kidding me. So I looked down, I got a flat front tyre, pinch flat front tyre. And I pull over at the side of the road and I get my tools out. Now, this is the first time I've ever really flatted in a race, but it's going to happen at some point. And I'm there resting with my tools at the side of the road, get the puncture fixed, get back on the bike, and off I go. It was a very narrow road, it was single track, and so with cars trying to navigate, cyclists coming the other way, and me there trying to fix my tyre. Because I fixed my tyre on the other side of the road so cyclists didn't have to move around me. I got some close passes when I was down there fixing my bike, unfortunately, but I was there. I was just in survival mode, maybe I should have fixed it somewhere else, but I was thinking, look, I need to get this fixed, I need to get moving again. By the time that I was back on the road looking at my data on Training Peaks, unfortunately I lost the best part of 9 minutes, which feels like quite a long time to me to fix a flat tyre. But there was that kind of that adrenaline, that frustration, fumbling around with the tools. It wasn't a textbook change. And of course, having to pump it back up at the same time, I realised in my, an error for myself is I was pumping it up. I thought, hang on a minute, I've got a CO2 cartridge in my saddlebag. I can use that instead. And I thought, hang on a bit, I don't actually know how to use this, because I've always thought to myself, no, don't use the CO2 cartridges for training, save them for race day when you need that pressure fast. So I've never actually changed, because the tool that I have is a dual tool, CO2 and a pump. I thought I've never actually changed a flat with CO2. And by the time that I fixed this flat, I could have actually, but by the time that I fiddle around with the CO2 and maybe completely waste the cartridge, I could have actually got it pumped up to reasonable pressure. I've only got 2 kilometers to go. Let's get it up to like 30 psi, 20, 30 psi, and just push those last couple of kilometers home. So that's what I did. Got home, got over the line. Got into transition, racked my bike, and then I put my shoes on and I started running. And then I realised after the first few hundred meters, hang on a minute, I didn't actually tighten. I had some lock laces, didn't actually tighten them. So I stopped and I tightened them, the little plastic collar, tightened my right one, tightened my left one, ping. My elastic laces snapped. Oh, you are kidding me. So I've now got one side that is tightened, one side that is not tightened. What am I going to do? And the lace was completely frayed to bits where it had snapped. just thought the end had snapped off in my hand. I lost sort of the first like 3 inches of the lace. So what I did is I tied a reef knot with my left shoe using the elastic laces, knowing that I wouldn't be able to undo it, but I could always cut myself out of my shoe at the end of the race, and just got on and kept pushing. And I pushed, and I wasn't fast. I think I was like, well, I wasn't fast for me. I think I was holding around about 4:20, 4:30 minutes per kilometre, which when I was talking about sub 20 at the start of the episode, gives you an idea that, it wasn't rapid. And I remember I told my other half, who was away on the continent at the moment, at the time, and she was a bit kind of worried about me racing. And I said, look, I'm due to go off about 9:13. I should be finished by about 10:30. I remember I came round to start my final lap, and I saw 10:38 on the clock, and I thought, oh no, she's going to be sat there worrying that she hasn't heard from me, and worried, what it is that might have happened to me if I crashed on the bike, whatever. We've not been together too long, so she's not used to be doing these triathlons. And, so I really sort of got head down, pushed hard on that last lap, still getting passed by other people, crossed the line in a relatively disappointing time. And, there's then that process of like, well, how do I feel about this, and what is it that I can do to prevent this from happening again? I think the number one issue with anyone who has a disappointing race is probably going to be your training. This is what things boil down to a lot of the time. Now, there are some exceptions, of course. If you have a complete nutritional meltdown during a long race, such as an Ironman or a 70.3, then that can have a real impact. But sometimes that can be because you didn't train your stomach enough, you didn't practice your nutrition strategy enough in your training. Of course, things are always going to happen on race day which are going to sort of really impact what it is that you do, and your result. But broadly speaking, your training is the foundation. Now, this is good and this is bad. So this is good because improving your training is something that we can all do. We could all do things better. We could all optimize things better. We could always go back and change things. If we found that we had no legs on the run, or like me at the event, that I just couldn't put out any power on the bike, what's the solution to that? Well, you reassess your bike training and you go, what is it that I can do to help improve that? And the answer, I know what the answer is. Longer rides, more intervals. It's simple for me, and I know that is, for me, I'll just be focused on the consistency, getting in the sessions day after day, week after week, month after month. But for anyone, we can always look back and go, well, my legs just faded towards the end. Well, that's muscular endurance. That is the issue there. You may have the aerobic fitness, but your legs just weren't able to keep up with what it is that your lungs were capable of. Equally, if you find, my swimming, it's not there, it's really struggling. Well, more time swimming, more drills. Get somebody to look at your stroke. Okay. The training is the bedrock, and in that way it's good because that means that it's really easy for you to fix this. The reason it's bad is because if you find yourself and your fitness is really not where you want to be, if your training has been poor and that is the main reason for it, there's no real quick fix. You can't just go, I'll fix that. I will change that. It's not going to work. What we need to do instead is we need to have a long look and go, right, okay, this isn't going to fix itself overnight. This isn't something that can be fixed with a change of mindset, with a change of intensity, with a new piece of equipment. I need to go back to the drawing board and I need to work out what it is that's missing from my training, where it is that I went wrong. And I would say, now I've definitely focused on the swim and the bike because I know that those are where I struggle the most. I wouldn't necessarily change, for me personally, with this race. I wouldn't change the distribution of training. I would probably do a bit more intensity on the bike and in the swim. I mean, the swim again, I'd only been swimming for a couple of months. I was trying to build up to swimming 750 meters non-stop and still having the energy to go out and to crush the bike and the run. And I think that, broadly speaking, I did everything that I should have done. I think some mistakes I did make with swimming, though, was that I got to the session without quite enough time to finish my set, and there are definitely a couple of swims that I did where I didn't finish my set, and that is something I need to do. I just need to get better at waking up earlier, getting out of the door quicker, and getting that session done before the end of the lane swimming is sort of official session. And with regards to the bike, I should have really been putting my TT bike on the turbo from like March, April onwards to get me ready for potential races. I shouldn't have waited until I signed up for a race to switch onto my race bike. So that is on me. That is something that I would have told a client to do if they were in my situation. I just didn't apply that same logic to myself, and that one's on me. As for the training on the run, again, I didn't do that much running in my training. I probably should have just done a bit more volume on the run. With regards to intensity, I've always been relatively able to pull an intense run out of the bag. And I would have wanted to focus the intensity on the bike and the swim more, honestly. I mean, maybe if I'd have done, if I'd have signed up to the race early, I knew that was coming, maybe towards the end of April, I would have done like a big park run, to find out where is my 5k at the moment, give myself a ballpark idea. Could have done that, but I don't feel that putting a load of threshold intervals would have markedly changed my result on the day itself. So let's have a look at the mistakes that I made on race day itself. So the goggles, that was completely avoidable. Just pack 2 pairs of goggles. I need to remember that. Sometimes the best way for us to learn lessons is to learn the hard way. Now, the really hard way would have been if I had to do breaststroke in the race. That would have really taught me a lesson, but I think the panic and the stress that I encountered in transition, not being able to find my goggles, I think that more than made up for it. I need to stay cognizant of the fact that even though I've been doing this for 14 years now, that I still need to remember to go through everything. I still need to make sure, what I generally do is I do a visualization when I'm at home, imagine myself at the start line coming out, what is it I need in transition, what is it I need on the bike, what clothing, all those items, and go through it. But I do need to just refer to this checklist and go, right, have I got every single item on that checklist, rather than just sort of doing it on vibes. Because, like a spare pair of goggles, if one snaps or you lose the goggles or you forgot to pack them, then it's just, your race is absolutely it's over, let's be honest. Even if it's only sprint, even if it's only 750 metres, I would have been closer to about 25 minutes in the swim if I didn't have my goggles. So, absolutely, that's on me, and I need to get better at that. On the bike, the puncture. What is it that I could do about the puncture? Well, there were 2 things I could have done differently. 3 things, actually. The first is put more pressure in my tyres. Now, if you look at tyre pressure charts and you look at my weight and where I am, then they recommend being around that kind of 60-70 psi area for someone such as myself on the tyres that I'm running. And that's something that I try to sort of keep in mind, but it's not the first pinch flat that I've got. And I need to accept, riding on British roads, I need to forego rolling resistance and efficiency there and just pump my tyres up that bit more to make sure that I don't end up with a pinch flat. Does it mean a slightly rougher ride where I might not be quite as efficient? It might cost me 30 seconds or a minute of my bike split. I don't know, maybe, I haven't quite delved into all of the numbers on that. But the fact of the matter is that having to stop and change a puncture is going to cost you far more time than any suboptimal rolling resistance ever would. So, more pressure on tyres. The other option I could do is run tubeless. Now, the wheels on my race bike aren't tubeless ready. I could get some, upgrading the wheels just hasn't been a priority for me at the moment. But when I do look at getting some wheels, then yes, I will make sure I get some tubeless ready tyres, tubeless ready wheels, get some tubeless tyres, and go down that route to completely avoid the risk of a pinch flat, allow me to run those slightly lower pressures without risk. Now, if I was going to run hookless rims, which I probably won't, but if I was to, then I would make sure that I was at the absolute minimum. Well, probably 10 psi over the minimum they recommend, just to make sure. Broadly speaking, I just need to sort of do better with my preparation. And the third thing I could have done is kept a better eye out for potholes. Now, it was quite hard to spot that pothole, but from what I could tell, nobody else hit it. Nobody else was at the side of the road grappling with a tyre. So again, this one's on me. This is one of the, I guess, the hard things is when you have a disappointing race is you have to reflect and go, well, it's triathlon. Like, the result that I get, like, it's on me. Like, there's very few other people I can point the finger at. We have a tendency, I think, as a species, to immediately want to blame somebody else. And you see some people, they struggle with this really badly in all walks of life. When they're growing up, it's their parents' fault. When they're older, it's the government, it's the council, it's somebody else. It's never their fault. They have a real accountability problem. You know, they can't accept that the reason that this thing happened was because they weren't paying attention, they weren't up to scratch, they didn't listen properly. Okay, it's got to be somebody else's fault. But in triathlon, like, we have to be pretty good at holding ourselves to account, looking in the mirror and asking these honest questions and going, Simon, the fact that you got that puncture there, it was avoidable. You know, if you'd have either run tubeless, had more pressure in your tyre, or been paying more attention to the road, that wouldn't have happened. Equally, if you had packed 2 pairs of goggles, or you'd been paying more attention when you were repacking your bag after getting the bits out, then you wouldn't have misplaced your goggles and had all that stress at the start and got to the race briefing late. I just need to look at this and go, yep, that's on me. You know, if I'd been doing more in the way of swimming, if I'd started that earlier, if I'd done more intensity in my cycling, these are all things that I can do differently. But these are things that I can change, and it's in my power to change them. The final one is the elastic laces on the run. Now, the elastic laces, they definitely weren't brand new. I'd had them for about like 3 or 4 years, but the number of races that I'd done on them, it wasn't monumental. But they were starting to fray a bit. And I don't know, would I necessarily... Is this a sign to me to say, you know what, Simon, you probably need to get a new set of elastic laces every season? Or you need to practice with, before you get to the event, you need to practice putting them on and taking them off a few times quickly to make sure that they aren't at the point where they're about to crumble and fall apart. I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that. Maybe that's something I need to consider. But it's, again, that one, I wouldn't say that one was really on me as much as the puncture in the goggles. I'd say that was just more of a kind of, just one of those things that happens. If you race triathlon for long enough, that's the kind of thing that will probably happen to you at some point. But I was frustrated, but I didn't panic. I didn't beat myself up about it. I came up with a solution in seconds, and I got back on with my race. But here's something, is that despite the fact that I had a bit of a panic ahead of the race, I had a very mediocre swim, to say the least, by my times at least. I had the puncture on the bike, I had the problem on the run. I still crossed the line with a smile on my face. If you follow me on Instagram, at Phase on Triathlon, I made a post the other day with me smiling just there at the finish line, looking quite happy with myself. And it is just a smile, it's relaxed, it's happy, it's natural. I'm not stomping my feet, I'm not throwing my toys out the pram, I'm not being really frustrated. Because, partly is because this is an event, it was a short event that I signed up to with only sort of a few weeks to go. It was low pressure. I was just there, I was just happy, but I had fun out there. I was out there, I was pushing my body hard. I was racing with other people. in a lovely part of the world. The swim, to be able to swim in 18-degree water and to be able to have a really nice time out there, it just felt like I was alive again. First race back after a break, and you think, oh, like this is great. This is awesome. Like, I remember why I've been doing all of this training. I remember why it is, not that I forgot, but it reaffirms my decision to work in triathlon in the industry. It was just great. I had so much fun. And that is what you need to take away from it. Is even when you have races where it feels like everything goes wrong, is to think of yourself, look, I'm lucky to be here and to be able to do this. I can't afford to take this for granted, and I really need to make sure that I keep that front and centre in my mind. The training, yes, there's lots that I can do with my training over the rest of the year. I want to get back to at least 14 minutes on the swim. I want to be averaging closer to 33, 34 kilometres per hour for the whole bike as a minimum. And I want to be getting close to 20 minutes for the 5k. But I've got the time to do that. I've set myself a benchmark. And now it's up to me to put in the work that I need to turn that around. Next event, same organiser, same venue. I think I'm going to do 5th of July, Olympic distance. Okay? And I just want to go out there and I want to have more fun. I want to complete it and remind myself, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can put in a vaguely competitive time. Looking at the results, I've ended up sort of 2/3 of the way down the list because I lost 10 minutes with the puncture. And I think I would have been about 20th if I didn't have the puncture. I did some very rough maths. But yeah, I want to go out there. I want to be competitive. I want to have fun, and I want to remember why it is that I do this. And who knows? Maybe I'll even do a middle distance at the end of the year. I want to continue enjoying triathlon. And again, it's another reason why I encourage people not to just sign up for one Ironman or 170.3 in the year. It's to say, you know what? I am going to do a couple of races so I can, even if my one day that I'm building towards ends up being a little bit of a disaster, a little bit of a disappointment, I have something else to fall back on. Now, if it's just your first Ironman, then just finishing would be incredible. But again, there were all sorts of things that could stop you from finishing. You could wake up on the day of the race really unwell and unable to start. You could be hit by another competitor. There are all sorts of things that can happen that can stop you from finishing. Having these little warm-up races, they are a nice way so that even if your big goal that you had during the season didn't happen, it didn't manifest, you have a number of other small wins out there. And you say, well, at least I did that and I had fun there and I did this. So I think I'll round it off there. It's a short episode this week, but I think I've already said all that needs to be said, so there's no sense in me rattling on unnecessarily. You need to accept things that are outside your control. You need to accept the things that were in your control. You need to take accountability for your actions. You need to make a plan of how it is that you can avoid that happening in future. You need to not beat yourself up when you make mistakes, because we all do. Even myself, it's my job, triathlon, it's my job, professional athletes, you see them make mistakes as well. We all have disappointing races, we all have disappointing events, and that by taking on multiple races, multiple events in a year, you can help spread that out. And so that if you do your main event, it doesn't quite go to plan, then you still have all these events where even if you didn't set a personal best at those events, you had fun, you saw a new part of the world, you raced alongside other people, and you had that motivation to stay fit, to stay healthy, and to stay active. Thank you very much for your company this week. Please subscribe if you haven't done already and you found it useful, and I'll see you all next Tuesday morning.